All doctors gave up. Billionaire declared dead, until poor Maid's toddler slept on him overnight. The machines beeped their monotonous rhythm in the private wing of Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital, a sound that had become as familiar as breathing to anyone who entered room 1847. Marcus Whitmore lay motionless on the pristine white sheets, his once commanding presence reduced to a still form connected to countless tubes and monitors. At 32, he had been one of Wall Street's most brilliant minds, a self-made billionaire who'd turned a small tech startup into a global empire before most people finished paying off their student loans. Now, 3 weeks into his coma, the prognosis grew bleaker with each passing day. Dr. Patricia Chin stood at the foot of his bed, reviewing charts she'd memorized days ago, hoping somehow the numbers would reveal a different truth. "There's no brain activity beyond the most basic STEM functions," she explained to Marcus's older brother, Richard, who stood by the window overlooking Central Park. "We've exhausted every treatment protocol." I'm so sorry." Richard Whitmore's jaw tightened. Unlike his younger brother, he'd inherited their father's manufacturing business and preferred the predictability of steel and machinery to Marcus's world of algorithms and venture capital. They hadn't been close, not for years, but blood was blood. "What are you saying, doctor?" "I'm saying you should consider saying goodbye. His organs are beginning to fail. Even if he were to wake up, which at this point would be..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It would be unprecedented. The damage would likely be catastrophic." The door opened quietly, and Elena Rodriguez entered with her cleaning cart, immediately sensing the heavy conversation. "I'm sorry," she said softly, her slight accent coloring her words. "I can come back later." "No, it's fine," Dr. Chin said, offering a tired smile. "We were just finishing." Elena had been cleaning this room every evening for the past 3 weeks, and in that time, she developed an unusual habit. While she dusted and mopped, she talked to Marcus, as if he could hear every word. She told him about her day, about her daughter Sophia, about the small joys and struggles of her life. The nurses thought it was sweet. Dr. Chin had gently explained that while some believed coma patients could hear, there was no scientific evidence to support it. Elena didn't care about the science. Her grandmother had always taught her that the soul could hear what the body could not. "Mr. Marcus," she said as she began wiping down surfaces after Richard and Dr. Chin had left, "today my Sophia, she learned a new word. Luna, moon." She pointed at the sky during our walk home and said it clear as day. Elena smiled at the memory, though her eyes glistened. "You should see her, Mr. Marcus. She's so small but so full of life. Sometimes I wonder what kind of world she'll grow up in, you know? I want to give her everything, but..." She trailed off, swallowing the familiar ache of inadequacy that came with being a single mother working 3 jobs to afford their studio apartment in the Bronx. Sophia's father had left before she was born, and Elena's own family was back in Guatemala, too far away to help, too poor to visit. "I pray for you every night," Elena continued, moving to adjust the blanket around Marcus's shoulders with the same care she used when tucking in her daughter. "I pray that whatever your soul is doing, wherever you are, you find your way back. Because I think maybe the world needs more people who can dream big like you did. Sophia, she's going to dream big too. I'll make sure of it." As Elena finished her cleaning, she did something she'd done every night. She placed her hand gently on Marcus's forehead. "Que Dios te bendiga," she whispered. "May God bless you." She had no way of knowing that Marcus's subconscious, trapped in an endless gray fog, had latched onto her voice like a drowning man grasping at a rope. In the vast emptiness of his coma, Elena's stories about Sophia had become the only points of light, small, persistent, refusing to let him drift away entirely. The next morning, Richard Whitmore stood in the hospital conference room with Marcus's team of doctors, his lawyer, and the hospital's ethics board. The decision had been made. After 72 more hours, if there was no change, they would begin withdrawing life support. "He wouldn't want this," Richard said, though his voice lacked conviction. The truth was, he didn't know what Marcus would want. They'd spent the last decade as strangers who sent birthday cards. Outside the conference room, Elena arrived for her day's shift, which she'd taken on to cover a sick colleague's hours. She needed the money. Sophia's daycare had raised their rates again. As she passed room 1847, she saw the unusual activity, the grim faces, and her heart sank. She knew what those expressions meant. She'd seen them before in the pediatric wing, in the cancer ward, in all the places where hope went to die. That evening, as she prepared to clean the room, a nurse pulled her aside. "Elena, I thought you should know. They're making the decision to let him go. 72 hours from now." Elena felt tears spring to her eyes. She didn't even know Marcus Whitmore personally, had never met him before his coma, but she'd grown attached to this silent man whose only company was machines and the occasional visitor who looked more relieved to leave than sad to see him this way. Can I have a few minutes with him?" Elena asked. The nurse nodded sympathetically. Elena entered the room and took her usual position beside the bed. For a long moment, she just looked at Marcus's face, young despite everything, with features that might have been handsome if they weren't so still. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," she whispered. "I'm sorry nobody could." She thought of Sophia, waiting at home with Mrs. Kim from downstairs who watched her for free sometimes. She thought of all the times she'd felt powerless to change the hard realities of her life. "You know," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion, "my mama used to say that we're all connected. All of us, rich or poor, powerful or weak. She said that sometimes God puts people in our path not because we can save them, but because they remind us why we keep fighting. You reminded me, Mr. Marcus. Thank you for that." She squeezed his hand one final time and left the room, not knowing that in 72 hours, everything would change in the most impossible way. The next day brought Elena to the edge of her endurance. It started at 4 a.m. when Sophia woke up with a fever, her small body burning and her cough rattling like stones in a jar. Elena had spent most of the night applying cool compresses and rocking her daughter back to sleep, only to have Sophia wake again, crying and confused. By the time the sun rose, Elena faced an impossible choice: miss her shifts and lose the money she desperately needed for rent, or find someone to watch Sophia on a Sunday when Mrs. Kim was visiting her own grandchildren in Queens. Her other neighbors worked weekends. The free clinic wouldn't open until Monday. And bringing a sick child to a hospital where Elena worked, where sick people with compromised immune systems filled every floor, seemed almost cruel. "Mama's here, mi amor," Elena whispered, pressing her lips to Sophia's forehead. The fever had broken slightly, and Sophia was sleeping more peacefully now, her small chest rising and falling with each breath. She looked so tiny in their shared bed, surrounded by stuffed animals that Elena had collected from thrift stores, a worn teddy bear, a one-eyed bunny, a plush moon that Sophia carried everywhere since learning the word Luna. Elena's phone buzzed with texts from her supervisor. The hospital was short-staffed due to a flu outbreak among the cleaning crew. They needed her. The texts grew more insistent. Double pay if she could come in immediately. Double pay. That would mean catching up on electricity before they shut it off. That would mean actual groceries instead of just rice and beans stretched across the week. That would mean maybe, finally, replacing Sophia's shoes that were one size too small. Elena looked at her sleeping daughter and felt her heart breaking. She called every number in her phone. No one answered. She even called the daycare center, hoping irrationally that someone would be there on a Sunday. Nothing. At 9 a.m., Elena made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. She dressed Sophia in warm pajamas, packed a small bag with her daughter's favorite blanket, some crackers, juice, and medicine, and took the subway to Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital. Her hands shook the entire journey, second-guessing herself with every stop. But what choice did she have? This was America, the richest country in the world, and yet here she was, a mother forced to choose between her child's comfort and keeping a roof over their heads. Elena had a plan, though it made her stomach twist with anxiety. There was a small staff break room on the floor where Marcus Whitmore's private wing was located. It was rarely used on Sundays. Most of the weekend staff preferred the larger break room on the second floor. If she could settle Sophia there, she could check on her between cleaning rooms. Sophia was sleeping soundly now, and the fever medicine Elena had scraped together money for seemed to be working. She carried her sleeping daughter through the service entrance, using her badge to access the back corridors that visitors never saw. Her supervisor, Janice, was at the nurse's station when Elena arrived on the floor. "Rodriguez, thank God," Janice said, barely looking up from her tablet. "We need the entire West Wing done by noon, then the private rooms then." She stopped when she saw Sophia in Elena's arms. "What's that?" "My daughter," Elena said, lifting her chin even as her heart hammered. "My babysitter canceled, and she's sick. I'll keep her in the break room. She's sleeping. She won't be any trouble. I needed the hours." Janice's expression softened slightly. She was a single mother too, though her kids were grown now. She remembered those years of impossible choices. The break room, nowhere else. If administration sees her. They won't. I promise. "Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much." Elena settled Sophia on the small couch in the break room, surrounding her with her blanket and stuffed animals. She kissed her daughter's forehead, still warm, but better, and whispered, "Mama will be right outside, checking on you. I promise." For the next 2 hours, Elena worked faster than she ever had, completing her rounds in record time, so she could return to check on Sophia every 15 minutes. Each time she opened the break room door, she found her daughter sleeping peacefully, and each time her heart rate slowly returned to normal. It was just after noon when disaster struck. Elena was cleaning a room 3 doors down from Marcus's when she heard her supervisor's voice, sharp with panic. "Elena, Elena, where are you?" She rushed into the hallway to find Janice, standing outside the break room, her face pale. "She's not here. Your daughter. She's not in the break room." The world seemed to tilt.
"What?"
"No, I just checked 20 minutes ago." "Well, she's not here now." Elena's training cart crashed against the wall as she ran to the break room. Empty. The blanket was tangled on the couch, Sophia's stuffed moon lying on the floor. Her daughter's small shoes were gone from beside the couch. "Sophia." Elena's voice cracked. "Sophia." Other staff members emerged from rooms, responding to the panic in her voice. Security was called. The floor went on lockdown, no one in or out. Elena ran from room to room, checking under beds, in bathrooms, in supply closets, her heart thrashing against her ribs like a caged bird. "She couldn't have gotten far," a nurse said, trying to be comforting. "She's only 2, right? She probably just woke up looking for you." But the floor was large, with multiple wings, dozens of rooms, and, God help her, windows. Elena's mind conjured every terrible possibility as she searched, calling Sophia's name until her throat was raw. It was a young orderly named Marcus Chun who finally said the words that stopped everyone cold. "Did anyone check the private wing?" The door was propped open earlier. Someone was moving equipment. The private wing. Where Marcus Whitmore lay dying. Where unauthorized personnel, especially children, were absolutely forbidden. Elena ran, her supervisor and 2 security guards following close behind. She burst through the double doors into the quiet, expensive corridor where each room was more like a luxury hotel suite than a hospital room. She checked the first room. Empty. The second. Empty. The third. She reached room 1847 and saw through the window a sight that turned her blood to ice. Sophia was in a room. Her small form was climbing onto Marcus Whitmore's bed, using the chair beside it as a step. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. The machines continued their work. And Sophia, with the innocent determination of a toddler, was pulling herself up onto the billionaire's chest. "Sophia, no!" Elena screamed, slamming her palm against the door's access panel. But she was too late. By the time the door opened, Sophia had settled herself on Marcus's chest, her small head resting against his shoulder, her arms wrapped around him in the trusting way she held her mother during nightmares. "Get her off him." Security pushed past Elena. "The liability if something happens to him." But Elena was frozen, staring at her daughter and at Marcus Whitmore's face beneath her. Because something was different. His expression, which had been slack and empty for 3 weeks, had changed. His brow was slightly furrowed. His mouth moved just the smallest bit. "Wait," Elena whispered. Then louder. "Wait. Look at him." Dr. Chen was paged emergently. She arrived within minutes, out of breath, to find a scene that would make no sense in any medical textbook. A toddler sleeping on her dying patient, security guards frozen in confusion, and Elena Rodriguez explaining through tears that she'd seen him move. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen said, but she was already moving to the monitors, her eyes widening. "His heart rate is up. Blood pressure is rising. Brain activity." She stopped, leaning closer to the EEG display. "This can't be right." "What is it?" Elena asked, her hand on Sophia's small back, feeling her daughter's breath synchronized with Marcus's. "His brain activity is increasing. Significantly." Dr. Chen looked from the machines to the unlikely pair on the bed. This doesn't make medical sense." "Should we move the child?" one of the security guards asked. Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment, her scientific training warring with what the machines were showing her. Finally, she said something that would have gotten her laughed out of any medical conference. "No. Don't move her. Not yet." And so they waited. Elena, Dr. Chen, the security guards, and Janice, all watching a mystery unfold that medicine couldn't explain. A 2-year-old girl with a fever, sleeping on the chest of a billionaire in a coma, somehow reaching him in a place where technology and expertise had failed. Word spread through the hospital like electricity through water. By evening, the hallway outside room 1847 had become an impromptu gathering place for staff members who'd heard the impossible story. Nurses from other floors, residents finishing their shifts, even maintenance workers found reasons to pass by, hoping to catch a glimpse of the toddler who'd somehow breathed life into a dying man. Dr. Chen had called in every specialist she could reach on a Sunday evening. Marcus's neurologist, Dr. James Hartfield, arrived from a family dinner with marinara sauce still on his sleeve. A pediatrician, Dr. Amira Nasser, came to monitor Sophia, concerned about a sick child in such close proximity to a patient with a compromised immune system. "This is highly irregular," Dr. Hartfield said, studying the monitors with undisguised amazement. "His brain activity has increased 40% in the last 3 hours. The patterns suggest he's dreaming. REM sleep. He hasn't shown REM activity since the accident." Elena sat in the chair beside the bed, her eyes never leaving her daughter. Sophia had barely stirred, sleeping more deeply than she had all night. The fever had broken completely. Her small hand was curled in the fabric of Marcus's hospital gown, her dark curls splayed across his chest. "How is this possible?" Elena whispered, not really expecting an answer. Dr. Nasser, checking Sophia's temperature for the 3rd time, shook her head. "There are studies, limited anecdotal mostly, about the power of human connection. Skin-to-skin contact releasing oxytocin, affecting heart rate variability, even influencing immune response. But nothing like this. Nothing that could explain this level of neurological improvement." Richard Whitmore had been called from the emergency meeting about his brother's estate. He arrived with his lawyer, both men in expensive suits that looked absurd in the softly lit hospital room. He stood at the foot of his brother's bed, staring at Sophia with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. "Who is this child?" Richard demanded. "And why is she on my brother?" "My daughter," Elena said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm Elena Rodriguez. I clean this floor." "I'm so sorry. She was sick. I had no one to watch her. She wandered off and—" "You brought a sick child into a sterile medical environment." The lawyer stepped forward. "Do you understand the liability? If your daughter compromises Mr. Whitmore's health." "Look at the monitors," Dr. Chen interrupted, her professional composure cracking. "Your client has been dying for 3 weeks. Every intervention we've tried has failed. And now he's showing signs of consciousness for the first time. Because of this child." "That's scientifically absurd," the lawyer sputtered. "Yes," Dr. Chen agreed. "It is. And yet here we are." Richard moved closer to the bed, studying his brother's face. Elena watched him, saw something flicker in his eyes, recognition, maybe, or memory. When he spoke, his voice was softer. When we were kids, Marcus was always the one who believed in impossible things. He'd stay up all night working on some crazy idea, some invention or business plan that everyone said would never work. He paused. He proved them wrong every time. Mr. Whitmore, Elena said carefully, I know this looks bad. I know I shouldn't have brought my daughter here. But I swear to you, I would never do anything to hurt anyone. Her voice broke. I had no choice. And now, I don't understand what's happening, but if my Sophia is somehow helping your brother, then please let her stay. The room fell silent except for the machines and the soft sound of Sophia's breathing. Richard looked at his unconscious brother, at the child sleeping on his chest, at Elena's desperate face. Finally, he turned to his lawyer. Give us the room. Richard, I must advise. Out. When the lawyer had gone, Richard sank into the chair on the opposite side of the bed. Tell me something. Why do you talk to him? The nurses said you talk to my brother every night like he can hear you. Elena blinked, surprised. Because everyone deserves to be spoken to like a person. Even if they can't answer. Maybe especially then. What do you talk about? My day. My daughter. Small things mostly. Dreams. She touched Sophia's back gently. I told him about Sophia learning to say moon, about how she points at every light in the sky and says Luna now, even stars, about how someday I want to take her to a place where you can see so many stars they look like spilled sugar. Richard's throat worked. He used to love astronomy. When we were kids, before. He didn't finish. Our parents had expectations. He was supposed to join the family business, marry the right woman, follow the plan they'd laid out. Instead, he ran off to Stanford, started coding in his dorm room, built an empire from nothing. There was admiration in his voice, but also something else, regret, maybe. We fought about it. Said terrible things. I called him selfish, reckless. He called me a coward. We didn't speak for 5 years. But you came when he needed you, Elena said gently. Did I? Or did I come to manage his assets? Richard scrubbed his hands over his face. I don't even know anymore. I don't know my own brother. But you talk to him about stars and dreams, and somehow that's bringing him back. Dr. Chen cleared her throat from the doorway. I hate to interrupt, but we need to make a decision. The 72-hour window expires tomorrow afternoon. If we're going to continue aggressive treatment. Then we continue, Richard said firmly. Cancel the withdrawal order. If my brother is fighting to come back, then we give him every chance. Elena felt tears of relief slide down her cheeks. But, Richard continued, looking at Elena, I need to understand what we're dealing with. Doctor, what happens if we move the child? Dr. Chen hesitated. I don't know. Medically speaking, the correlation between her presence and his improvement is just that, correlation. It might be coincidence, temporary fluctuation in brain activity that would have happened anyway. But you don't believe that, Richard said. No, Dr. Chen admitted. I don't. And I'm not willing to risk his life to test the hypothesis. So they made a plan that violated every hospital protocol and defied everything Dr. Chen had learned in medical school. Sophia would stay with Marcus, monitored constantly. Elena would remain in the room. She'd been suspended pending an investigation into bringing her daughter to work, but Richard promised to handle the administrative consequences. Pediatric nurses would rotate through to monitor Sophia's health. And they would wait. Night fell over Manhattan, the city lights twinkling beyond the window like the stars Sophia loved. Elena pulled her chair closer to the bed, one hand resting on her daughter's back, the other hesitantly touching Marcus's arm. I don't know if you can hear me, she whispered, but Sophia and I were here. And we're not going anywhere. In the darkness of his coma, Marcus Whitmore felt the words like warm water breaking over him. He'd been trapped in a gray void for what felt like centuries, unable to move forward or back, lost in nothingness. But Elena's voice had always been there, a thread of light he'd learned to follow. And now there was something else, a small, warm presence on his chest, a heartbeat he could feel even when he couldn't feel anything else. A memory surfaced unbidden. His mother, before the cancer took her when Marcus was 10, holding him during a thunderstorm. The weight of a child's trust, the responsibility and grace of it. The feeling of being someone's entire world. He wanted to wake up. For the first time since the accident, Marcus Whitmore wanted desperately to open his eyes. The monitors showed another spike in brain activity. Dr. Chun, watching from her laptop at home, saw the alert and smiled through her tears. "Come on," she whispered to her screen. "Come back to us." By midnight, the hospital had quieted. Elena dozed in her chair, jerking awake every few minutes to check on Sophia. The night nurse, a grandmother named Cheryl, brought blankets and a pillow. "Get some rest, honey. I'll watch them both." "I can't sleep," Elena said, but her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. "Then at least close your eyes. You've been through enough today." Elena wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her. She laid her head on the edge of Marcus's bed, her hand still touching Sophia's back, and within moments, sleep claimed her. She didn't see Marcus's fingers twitch at 3 a.m. or the way his breathing pattern changed at 4. She didn't see Dr. Chen arrive at 5, summoned by the night nurse who'd noticed the changes. She didn't see Richard return at 6, having never gone home, carrying coffee and breakfast sandwiches for everyone. What woke Elena was Sophia's voice, small and clear in the dawnlight. "Mama." Elena's eyes flew open. Her daughter was sitting up on Marcus's chest, rubbing her eyes. And Marcus Whitmore's eyes were open, staring up at the little girl with an expression of profound wonder. "Oh my God," Elena breathed. And then Marcus's hand, weak, trembling, but definitely moving, reached up to touch Sophia's small back, the same way Elena had been touching her all night. His lips moved, forming words that took enormous effort. "Hello, little one." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Dr. Chen rushed to Marcus's side while Dr. Nasser gently lifted Sophia away, the little girl protesting loudly at being separated from her new friend. Nurses flooded in to check vitals, adjust monitors, page specialists. Elena pressed herself against the wall, trying to stay out of the way while keeping Sophia in sight, her mind reeling. He was awake. Marcus Whitmore was awake. "Mr. Whitmore, can you hear me?" Dr. Chen shone a light in his eyes, checking pupil response. "Do you know where you are?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper, rough from weeks of disuse. "Hospital." His eyes searched the room, pausing on Sophia, who'd wrapped herself around Elena's legs. "The child is fine," Dr. Chen assured him quickly. "Try not to talk too much. You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. Your body needs—" But Marcus was already trying to sit up, his arms shaking with the effort. "No." "The child. She was—" He struggled for words, his face contorting with concentration. "She was in my dreams. Stars. And someone talking about stars." Elena stepped forward hesitantly. "That was me. I clean your room. She didn't know how to explain. I talked to you. About my daughter. About stars." Marcus's gaze fixed on her, intense despite his obvious weakness. "You saved me." It wasn't a question. Your voice. It was the only real thing. Richard pushed through the crowd of medical staff, his face a mixture of shock and relief. "Marcus. Jesus Christ, you scared us." "Richard." Marcus's expression clouded with confusion. "You're here." "Of course I'm here. You're my brother." Something complicated passed across Marcus's face, but before he could respond, Dr. Chen intervened. "Gentlemen, I need to conduct a full neurological assessment. Everyone except essential medical staff needs to leave. Now." Elena gathered Sophia into her arms, but Marcus's voice stopped her. "Wait. What's your name?" "Elena Rodriguez. And this is Sophia." "Elena." He tested the name. "Don't go far. Please. I need to understand what happened." The next hours were a whirlwind of tests, scans, and examinations. Marcus's recovery was being called a miracle by some staff members, an anomaly by others. His brain showed no signs of the catastrophic damage Dr. Chen had predicted. His motor functions, while weak, were intact. His memories seemed unaffected. It was as if the coma had simply paused him, waiting for the right moment to press play. By afternoon, Marcus was sitting up in bed, eating solid food for the first time in weeks. Elena had been allowed to bring Sophia back to the room, though they sat in chairs by the window, giving Marcus space, while still remaining visible. Sophia clutched her plush moon and watched Marcus with solemn curiosity. "Tell me everything," Marcus said to Dr. Chen and Richard, who stood at his bedside. "What happened to me?" Richard explained. Marcus had been working late at his downtown office when the building's parking garage suffered a structural collapse. Marcus had been struck by falling concrete, sustaining severe head trauma. He'd been found 3 hours later by security, already in a coma. 3 weeks, Marcus repeated, processing. "I lost 3 weeks." "You almost lost everything," Richard said quietly. They wanted to pull the plug. If it hadn't been for... He gestured toward Elena and Sophia. Marcus looked at them, his expression unreadable. "I need to talk to them. Alone." Dr. Chen started to protest, but Marcus's look stopped her. "I'm awake, I'm coherent, and I'm requesting a private conversation. Unless you're planning to hold me prisoner?" With obvious reluctance, the medical staff filed out. Richard lingered. "Marcus. We'll talk later. I promise." When they were alone, Elena stood uncertainly, holding Sophia's hand. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry for everything that happened. I never should have brought my daughter to the hospital, and..." "Stop." Marcus held up a hand. "You're apologizing for saving my life? I don't know if I did that. The doctors say." "The doctors don't know everything." He smiled slightly, the expression transforming his gaunt face. "Come closer, please." Elena approached cautiously, lifting Sophia onto her hip. Up close, she could see the dark circles under Marcus's eyes, the pallor of his skin, the way his hands trembled slightly. But his eyes were alert, focused, alive. "What's your daughter's name again?" "Sophia." "She just turned 2. Sophia." He looked at the little girl, who stared back fearlessly. "Can she understand me?"
"Some."
"She's learning more words every day." Marcus addressed Sophia directly. "Thank you, Sophia. I don't know how or why, but you helped me find my way back." Sophia tilted her head, considering. Then she held out her plush moon. "Luna." Marcus's eyes widened. He took the toy with careful hands, turning it over like it was precious. "Luna. Yes. I dreamed about the moon, about stars, about someone who wanted to show them to you." Elena felt her throat tighten. "I told you that. In one of our conversations. I want to take Sophia somewhere with dark skies, where she can see real stars." "Where would you go?" "I don't know. I've never. We don't really travel. But maybe someday, when I save enough, we could drive upstate. Find a park or something." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, still holding the plush moon. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "In the coma, I was lost. Completely lost. I couldn't find my way forward or back. It was like being in deep water, with no sense of up or down. And then I heard your voice. Every evening, talking about your day, your daughter, your dreams. Small, ordinary things that felt like miracles." Elena blinked back tears. "I didn't know if you could hear me. The doctors said probably not, but my grandmother always told me to talk to people like they can understand, even when they can't show it." "Your grandmother was wise." Marcus handed the moon back to Sophia, who immediately hugged it. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. What happened with the hospital administration? Are you in trouble for bringing Sophia here?" Elena's stomach clenched. "I'm suspended pending investigation. They might fire me. Or worse, if they decide to press charges for, I don't even know what. Endangering a patient? Violating protocols?" She tried to keep her voice steady. "But it's okay. I'll figure it out. I always do." "How many jobs do you work?" The question surprised her.
3.
"I clean here 4 days a week. I work at a hotel downtown 2 nights, and I do weekend shifts at a restaurant. Why? And Sophia? Who watches her while you work? A neighbor, usually. Sometimes the daycare, when I can afford it. Elena's cheeks burned with shame at admitting her precarious situation to a billionaire. I'm sorry, I don't understand why. Because I want to help. I need to help. Marcus's intensity was almost overwhelming. You saved my life, Elena. You and Sophia. When everyone else had given up, you were there, talking to me about stars and dreams. Do you understand? You gave me a reason to fight my way back. You don't owe me anything. I was just what? Just being kind to someone everyone else had written off? Just showing up every evening to talk to a stranger who couldn't respond? Just refusing to let me die alone. Marcus's voice cracked. Elena, I've spent the last 10 years of my life building a fortune. I've acquired companies, made investments, created wealth that most people can't even comprehend. And none of it could save me. But your kindness did. Your daughter's innocence did. So please, let me do something meaningful with all that meaningless money. Before Elena could respond, there was a knock at the door. Richard entered, followed by a woman in an expensive suit carrying a leather portfolio. Marcus, this is Jennifer Hartwell from the hospital's legal team, Richard said. We need to discuss the situation with Ms. Rodriguez. Elena's heart sank. Here it came. The consequences. But Marcus spoke first. Ms. Hartwell, I'd like to make a few things clear. First, I am not pressing any charges or complaints against Ms. Rodriguez or this hospital. Second, I want it on record that Ms. Rodriguez's presence and her daughter's presence were instrumental in my recovery. And yes, I understand how that sounds medically, but I'm the patient, and that's my testimony. Third, I want Ms. Rodriguez's suspension reversed immediately and a full investigation into the hospital's policies that forced a single mother to choose between watching her sick child and earning a living. Jennifer Hartwell blinked. Mr. Whitmore, I appreciate your position, but there are serious protocol violations, which I'm sure we can resolve with a substantial donation to the hospital, Richard interjected smoothly. He'd evidently already caught on to his brother's intentions. Enough to establish a fund for employee emergency childcare, perhaps? I'm thinking 7 figures. Elena gasped. You can't. That's too much. It's not enough, Marcus said firmly. He looked at Jennifer. Are we clear? Jennifer glanced at Richard, who nodded. She sighed and made a note. I'll speak with administration. Ms. Rodriguez, you should expect to be reinstated by tomorrow morning. After Jennifer left, Elena stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Sophia squirmed in her arms, wanting down. Elena set her on the floor, where she immediately toddled to Marcus's bed and patted his hand. Up, Sophia demanded. Sophia, no. Elena started forward. But Marcus was already reaching for her, and despite his weakness, he managed to help Sophia scramble back onto the bed. She settled beside him with satisfaction, like she belonged there. She likes you, Elena said softly. The feeling is mutual. Marcus looked at the little girl, then at Elena. I meant what I said. I want to help. Not just with the job, but with everything. Childcare, education, a stable living situation. Whatever you need. Why? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. You don't know us. We're nothing to you. That's where you're wrong. Marcus met her eyes. You're everything. You're the reminder I needed that the most important things in life can't be bought or built. They can only be given freely, with kindness. He paused. My mother used to say that we're all connected by invisible threads. That when we pull on one thread, somewhere else, someone feels it. You pulled on my thread, Elena. You pulled me back from the darkness. Now let me pull back. The days that followed Marcus's awakening were a study in contrasts. In room 1847, a billionaire and a cleaning woman navigated the strange territory of their unlikely connection. Outside, the media had gotten wind of the miracle recovery, and the hospital was besieged with reporters demanding interviews, medical experts proposing theories, and social media exploding with speculation. Marcus refused all interviews. Elena declined to comment. And Sophia, blissfully unaware of the attention, continued her daily visits to Marcus's room, which had become as natural as breakfast. Dr. Chen monitored Marcus's progress with a mixture of professional satisfaction and scientific bewilderment. His recovery was proceeding at an unprecedented rate. Within a week, he was walking the hallways. Within 2, he was demanding his laptop and attending virtual board meetings from his hospital bed. "You need to slow down," Dr. Chen warned. "Your body has been through massive trauma." "My body is fine," Marcus countered. "It's my mind that can't rest." But the truth was more complicated. The coma had changed Marcus in ways he was still discovering. Priorities that once seemed crucial now felt hollow. Business decisions that would have consumed him for weeks now seemed trivial. And conversations he'd once avoided now felt urgent, like the one he needed to have with his brother. Richard visited every afternoon, usually bringing work documents for Marcus to review, but today Marcus set the papers aside. "We need to talk." Richard tensed. About why we stopped being brothers? The question hung in the air between them. Richard stood and walked to the window, his back to Marcus. "You know why. You chose your path, I chose mine. We grew apart."
"No.
"We didn't grow apart. We ripped apart. I did the ripping." Richard turned, surprise flickering across his face. "I was so desperate to prove I was different from Dad, from his plans, from his expectations," Marcus continued, "that I made you the enemy." "You weren't the enemy. You were just trying to hold the family together after Mom died, after Dad got sick. You took over the business, dealt with the pressure, carried the weight. And I ran away and called it ambition." "Marcus, I'm sorry. For the fight. For the things I said. 5 years of silence, when I should have been thanking you for keeping the door open." Richard sat down heavily, his composure cracking. "You stubborn bastard. I thought you'd never say it." "Almost didn't. Almost died without saying it." Marcus's voice roughened. "Turns out nearly dying gives you clarity about what matters." They sat in silence for a moment, years of resentment and regret dissolving like morning fog. "Tell me about her," Richard finally said. "Elena, you're different around her." "Am I?" "You smile more. Real smiles, not the corporate ones. And the way you are with her daughter." Richard shook his head. "I've never seen you like this." Marcus looked toward the door, though Elena and Sophia hadn't arrived yet for their afternoon visit. "In the coma, I was drowning in darkness. Her voice was the only light. Every evening, she'd come in and talk to me about her day, her struggles, her hopes for Sophia. Small, real things. No one else did that, Richard. Everyone else came in silent or talking about me like I wasn't there. So this is gratitude? It's more than that." Marcus struggled to articulate feelings he barely understood himself. "She reminds me of Mom. Not in looks or anything superficial, but in spirit. Mom used to say that kindness is the only currency that never loses value. Elena lives that way. Despite everything, being alone, working 3 jobs, barely scraping by, she still took time to be kind to a stranger who couldn't even thank her." "You care about her?" It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered anyway.
"Yes.
"I care about her. And Sophia. They've become..." He trailed off, unsure how to finish. "Family?" The word landed like a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading outward. Marcus tested it silently.
"Family.
"Maybe. Is that crazy?" "Probably," Richard said. "But then again, you've always excelled at the impossible." That evening, Elena arrived with Sophia as usual, but there was tension in her shoulders. Marcus noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. It's fine." "Elena." She sighed, setting Sophia down to play with her toys in the corner. "The hospital reinstated me like you arranged. But some of the other staff, they're saying things. That I'm taking advantage, that I'm using Sophia to manipulate you, that I'm some kind of gold digger." Her voice broke. "I'm not. I swear I'm not. I never asked for any of this." Marcus felt anger kindle in his chest, not at Elena, but at the cruelty of people who couldn't imagine generosity without ulterior motive. I know you didn't, and I don't care what they say. But I do. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I have to work here. I have to face these people every day. And now there are reporters calling my phone, asking questions, offering money for interviews. Someone posted my address online. I had to file a police report because people are showing up at my apartment. What? Marcus reached for his phone. I'll handle this. I'll get you security, move you somewhere safe. Stop. Elena held up her hand. Please, just stop. This is what I'm talking about. You keep trying to fix everything with money, but you can't fix this. These are my coworkers, my neighbors, my life. I can't just throw money at it and make it go away. Sophia, sensing her mother's distress, abandoned her toys and came to Elena, wrapping her small arms around her mother's legs. Elena picked her up, holding her close. Marcus felt helpless, a foreign sensation. In his business life, every problem had a solution. Every challenge could be overcome with enough resources and strategy. But this was different. This was about people, emotions, connections that couldn't be bought or built. Then tell me what you need, he said quietly. Not what I think you need, but what you actually need. I'm listening. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then sat down in the chair beside his bed, Sophia in her lap. I need to know what this is. Between us. Because I'm confused and scared, and I can't afford to make mistakes when I have Sophia to think about. What do you mean? I mean, are we friends? Are you my employer? Are you a patient I once cared for who feels obligated to help me? Because people keep asking me these questions, and I don't know how to answer them. Marcus realized he'd been asking himself the same questions. What were they to each other? I don't know, he admitted. But I know what we're not. We're not just a billionaire and his maid. We're not a debt being repaid. We're not a peer opportunity. Then what are we? Two people who found each other in the darkness. Two people who pulled each other into the light. He met her eyes. Can that be enough for now? Elena was quiet, her hand stroking Sophia's hair. Finally, she nodded. Okay. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. I don't want to be your charity case. I don't want to be the poor single mother you saved to feel good about yourself. If we're going to be, whatever we're going to be, it has to be because we choose each other, not because you feel guilty or grateful. I do choose you, Marcus said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Both of you. Not out of obligation, but because in the worst moment of my life, you treated me with dignity and kindness when you had no reason to. You made me feel human when I couldn't even move. That's not something I'll ever take for granted. Sophia squirmed in Elena's lap and reached toward Marcus. Marcus, she said carefully, sounding out the syllables. They both froze. Did she just? Marcus started. Say your name. Yes. Elena laughed through tears. She's been practicing. She wanted to surprise you. Marcus held out his arms, and Elena let Sophia clamber onto his bed. The little girl settled against his chest in the position that had become familiar to all of them, the position that had somehow bridged the gap between death and life. Hello, Sophia, Marcus said softly. Thank you for saying my name. Marcus, Sophia repeated, pleased with herself. Then Luna. She pointed at the window, where the moon was just visible in the early evening sky. Yes, Luna, Marcus agreed. He looked at Elena. Have you ever been stargazing? Real stargazing, away from the city lights.
No.
I told you, we don't really travel. Would you like to? Elena's brow furrowed. Marcus, I can't afford. Not on your own. With me. When I get out of here. He spoke quickly before she could protest. Not as charity. As friends. As people who share an interest in showing Sophia the stars. You want to take us stargazing? I want to go stargazing with you. There's a difference.
He paused.
Unless you'd rather not spend time with me outside this hospital room. I'd understand if. I'd like that, Elena interrupted. Sophia would like it too. Luna. Sophia confirmed, pointing at the window again. Marcus smiled, A real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his face from handsome to something approaching beautiful. Then it's a date. Well, not a date, unless, he stopped, flustered. I mean a plan. It's a plan. Elena was smiling too, despite herself. A plan works. They sat together as the sun set over Manhattan, Marcus and Sophia on the bed, Elena in her chair beside them. All three bathed in the golden light filtering through the window. Outside, the world churned with speculation and gossip about the billionaire's miracle recovery. Inside, three unlikely souls simply enjoyed each other's company. It was Richard who found them an hour later, having returned with dinner. He stood in the doorway, watching his brother laugh at something Elena was saying while Sophia dozed against Marcus's shoulder. "You look happy," Richard said when Elena excused herself to take Sophia to the bathroom. "I am," Marcus replied, sounding slightly amazed. "For the first time in years, I actually am." "So, what happens now? When you're discharged, back to your normal life?" Marcus thought about his penthouse apartment, 12,000 square feet of steel and glass overlooking Central Park, filled with expensive art he'd never really looked at and furniture too pristine to truly live on. He thought about his office, his board meetings, his investment portfolios. All of it suddenly felt like a mausoleum to a life he didn't want anymore. "I don't think I'm going back to normal," Marcus said slowly. "I think normal is what almost killed me." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've spent a decade building an empire and forgot to build a life." Elena and Sophia, they reminded me what a life looks like. It looks like talking about small things. It looks like pointing at the moon and saying, "Luna." It looks like being kind when you're exhausted and scared because that's just who you are. Richard sat down, studying his brother. "You've really changed. Haven't I always?" Marcus smiled wryly. "Remember when I told you I was leaving the family business to start a tech company? You thought I'd changed then, too. This is different. This is bigger than business." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "This is about becoming human again." Elena returned with Sophia, who immediately reached for Marcus. As Elena helped her daughter settle back onto the bed, Marcus caught her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Elena squeezed his hand gently. "You're welcome. But Marcus? I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because everyone deserves kindness. Even billionaires." She meant it as a light comment, but Marcus heard the deeper truth. She treated him with dignity not because of who he was, but despite it. She'd seen him as human first, patient second, and wealthy last. It was the greatest gift anyone had ever given him. 6 weeks after waking from his coma, Marcus Whitmore stood in the employee break room of Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital, surrounded by cleaning staff, nurses, and orderlies who'd heard he wanted to address them. He was still thinner than he'd been before the accident, and he tired easily, but his eyes were clear and his voice was strong. "I know you're all wondering why I asked you here," Marcus began. "You've probably heard rumors about what I'm planning. Some of them are true. Some of them are understatements." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. 2 months ago, I was dying in a room upstairs. The medical staff did everything they could, but ultimately, they couldn't save me. What saved me was simpler and more profound than any medical intervention. It was kindness. He found Elena in the crowd. She was standing in the back, holding Sophia, trying to be invisible. A cleaning woman named Elena Rodriguez talked to me every evening like I was human, even when everyone else had given up. Her daughter Sophia somehow found me in the darkness and pulled me back. He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I've spent my career believing that innovation and wealth were the measures of success. I was wrong. The true measure of success is how we treat each other when there's no reward for doing so. Elena showed me that. So did many of you who work in this hospital, cleaning, feeding, comforting patients even when no one notices or thanks you." Marcus pulled out a folder. "Today, I'm announcing the creation of the Elena and Sophia Foundation, endowed with $500 million. Its mission is simple: to ensure that no worker, in any hospital, anywhere, has to choose between earning a living and caring for their sick child. The foundation will establish emergency child care centers in hospitals nationwide, provide emergency funds for worker crises, and advocate for better wages and conditions for all support staff. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. But that's not all, Marcus continued. I'm stepping down as CEO of Whitmore Technologies. I'll remain on the board, but I'm done with the day-to-day empire building. Instead, I'm redirecting my focus to what matters, using my resources to create systemic change that supports people like Elena, like all of you, who keep society running while being paid the least and thanked even less. He looked directly at Elena now. Elena, would you come up here? She shook her head, but her co-workers gently pushed her forward. She made her way to the front, Sophia on her hip, her face burning with embarrassment. I have a proposition for you, Marcus said quietly enough that only she could hear. I need someone to run the foundation. Someone who understands what workers actually need, not what wealthy donors think they need. Someone with integrity, compassion, and first-hand experience. The salary is $250,000 a year to start. Full benefits, childcare included, flexible hours. He paused. Will you take it? Elena stared at him. Marcus, I can't. I'm not qualified. You're the only person qualified. You've lived this life. You know what helps and what doesn't. And you're exactly the kind of person who would never take advantage of the position. He smiled slightly. That's the whole point. What about cleaning? This job. You'd be giving someone else an opportunity. Someone else who needs it. Elena looked at Sophia, then back at Marcus. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. After the meeting, Elena walked with Marcus through the hospital gardens, a small oasis behind the building that few people knew about. Sophia chased pigeons while they talked. Why are you doing this? Elena asked. Really? Because almost dying taught me something crucial. We don't get time back. Every moment we waste on things that don't matter is a moment stolen from things that do. Marcus watched Sophia's joyful pursuit of birds that always stayed just out of reach. I wasted a decade building wealth. I want to spend whatever time I have left building meaning. And you think a foundation will do that? I think working with you will do that. The foundation is just the excuse. He met her eyes. Elena, I'm not asking you to run charity. I'm asking you to be my partner in creating something that outlasts both of us. Something Sophia and her generation will benefit from. I'm scared, Elena admitted. I'm not educated like you. I don't have experience running organizations. What if I fail? Then you'll fail while trying something brave, which is better than succeeding at playing it safe. Marcus gestured around the garden. Look at Sophia. She's chasing birds she can't catch. She fails every time. But she keeps trying because the trying itself is joyful. That's what I want to get back to, the joy of trying, even if we fail. They sat on a bench, watching Sophia play. After a long silence, Elena spoke. Okay, I'll do it. I'll run your foundation. She turned to face him, but on one condition. We do this as equals. Not as billionaire and charity case, not as patient and caretaker, but as partners who respect each other. Marcus offered his hand. Partners. Elena shook it, her grip firm despite her nervousness. Partners. 3 months later, on a clear October night, Marcus drove Elena and Sophia 3 hours north to Cherry Springs State Park in Pennsylvania, one of the darkest places on the East Coast. They arrived after sunset, just as the stars were beginning to emerge. Luna! Sophia shrieked with delight as the first stars appeared. Marcus had packed blankets, thermoses of hot chocolate, and a telescope. They spread the blankets on the grass and lay down, the three of them looking up at a sky so full of stars it seemed impossible. There are so many, Elena breathed. I've never seen anything like this. Light pollution hides them in the city, Marcus explained. But they're always there, waiting to be seen. Sophia sat between them, her head tilted back, mouth open in wonder. Luna, 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 she repeated, pointing at stars, planets, the actual moon. Everything in the sky was Luna to her, and somehow that was perfect. Thank you for this, Elena said softly. For remembering. I remember everything you told me, Marcus replied. Every story, every dream. They were the threads that pulled me back. They lay in silence, watching meteors streak across the sky. Sophia eventually fell asleep between them, one small hand in Elena's, the other in Marcus's. Can I tell you something? Elena asked. Anything. When I was a little girl in Guatemala, before we came to America, my grandmother used to tell me that the stars were the spirits of people who loved us, watching over us. She said that's why we should always be kind, because someday we'd be a star for someone else. Your grandmother was wise. She died when I was 12. But I think about her every time I see stars. I think about how she'd be proud of Sophia, proud of me for surviving, for trying to make a better life. Elena's voice caught. I wish she could see this. See us here. Marcus was quiet for a moment then. Maybe she can. Maybe she's one of those stars. Elena turned her head to look at him. Do you believe that? I believe that love doesn't end just because bodies do. I believe that the kindness your grandmother taught you saved my life. If that's not proof that we persist beyond ourselves, I don't know what is. They stayed until midnight, then carefully gathered the sleeping Sophia and the blankets. On the drive back, Elena dozed in the passenger seat while Sophia slept in her car seat. Marcus drove through the darkness, following highways that would lead them back to the city, but his mind was on constellations, both celestial and human. He thought about the invisible threads connecting people, Elena's grandmother to Elena to Sophia to him, Richard to their mother to Marcus. Every person he'd ever met, every life he'd touched or been touched by, all of them part of an intricate pattern he was only now beginning to see. The coma had stripped away everything extraneous, the wealth, the status, the identity he'd built so carefully. What remained was essential. The need for connection, for meaning, for love in its simplest forms. Elena's voice in the darkness. Sophia's weight on his chest. Richard's hand on his shoulder. These were the things that mattered, the only things that had ever mattered. By the time they reached the city, dawn was breaking. Marcus pulled up to the new apartment he'd helped Elena secure. Not out of charity, but because he needed an office for the foundation, and it made sense for the director to live in the same building. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, good schools nearby. Elena had insisted on paying market-rate rent, and Marcus had agreed, knowing that dignity mattered more than dollars. He carried the sleeping Sophia upstairs while Elena gathered their things. In the soft light of the apartment's living room, Marcus laid Sophia in her bed, tucking the plush moon beside her. Marcus, Sophia mumbled in her sleep, and his heart contracted. Elena appeared in the doorway. Coffee. They sat in her small kitchen as the sun rose over the city, both too energized by the night's magic to sleep yet. I've been thinking about something, Marcus said. About the foundation, about what we're building. What about it? I want to expand the mission. Not just childcare and worker support, but something bigger. Education, housing, healthcare, addressing all the systemic barriers that make it nearly impossible for people like you to thrive, no matter how hard they work. Elena raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. We almost died, Marcus said simply. Both of us in different ways. You were drowning in poverty and impossible choices. I was drowning in meaningless achievement. We pulled each other out. Imagine if we could do that for others. It would take decades, billions of dollars, political will, cultural change. Yes, Marcus agreed. It would. Should we do it anyway? Elena looked at him for a long moment, then smiled.
Yes.
We should absolutely do it anyway. They talked until the coffee pot was empty and the city had fully woken around them. They talked about impossible dreams and practical plans, about Sophia's future and the future of children they'd never meet. They talked as partners, as friends, as 2 people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and decided to build something beautiful from that chance encounter. When Marcus finally left, promising to meet Elena at the Foundation's new office later that afternoon, he stood on the sidewalk looking up at her apartment window. He thought about the trajectory of his life, where he'd been heading before the accident, toward more wealth, more success, more emptiness, and where he was heading now, toward something harder to define but infinitely more meaningful. His phone buzzed. Richard, brunch?
I want to hear about the stargazing.
Marcus smiled and replied, sounds perfect.
I have so much to tell you.
As he walked toward the subway, he'd given up his driver and started using public transportation, much to his security team's horror. Marcus thought about the invisible threads that connected everyone. The thread from Elena's grandmother to Elena to Sophia. The thread from his mother to him to Richard. The thread from the darkness of the coma to the light of Elena's voice. And he thought about new threads being woven. Between him and Elena, between their work and the people it would help, between the person he'd been and the person he was becoming. The subway was crowded with morning commuters, people heading to jobs they might not love, carrying burdens he couldn't see, fighting battles he'd never know about. Marcus found himself looking at them differently now, wondering about their stories, their struggles, their dreams. An elderly woman struggled with her shopping bags. Marcus helped her. A young father with a crying baby looked exhausted. Marcus offered his seat. Small things, ordinary kindnesses, the kind Elena had shown him when he couldn't even acknowledge them. The kind that saved lives. By the time Marcus reached Richard's apartment for brunch, his brother took one look at his face and smiled. You're different again. Am I? You look peaceful. Happy. Richard poured coffee. Tell me everything. So Marcus did. He told Richard about the stars, about Sophia's wonder, about Elena's grandmother, and invisible threads. He told him about the expanded mission for the Foundation, about his plans to use his wealth, not just to help people survive, but to help them thrive. You've found your purpose, Richard said when Marcus finished. I've found something better than purpose. I've found connection. Marcus looked at his brother. I've found family again. Not just you, but Elena and Sophia. And potentially thousands of people we haven't even met yet who'll be part of what we're building. Richard raised his coffee cup. To new constellations. Marcus clinked his cup against his brother's. To new constellations. 6 months after waking from his coma, Marcus Whitmore stood in the Foundation's new office, a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, deliberately chosen to be accessible to the communities they served. The walls were covered with artwork from Elena's neighborhood, photographs of workers they'd helped, a mural painted by local children depicting a sky full of stars. Sophia ran through the space, her footsteps echoing, calling Marcus. Marcus, and dragging him to see her favorite part of the mural, a large golden moon surrounded by small handprints. That's where I put my hand, Sophia explained seriously. That one is mine. It's beautiful, Marcus said, crouching to her level. Just like you. Elena watched them from across the room, her heart full. In 6 months, they'd hired a team of 12, established childcare centers in 5 hospitals, provided emergency support to over 300 families, and were just getting started. But more than that, they'd become a family, an unconventional, unexpected family, but a family nonetheless. Marcus looked up and met her eyes. The connection between them had deepened over months of working side by side, but neither had pushed for more than friendship, both content to let things develop naturally. They'd been through too much to rush something too precious. But in that look, Elena saw possibility. She saw future stargazing trips, more late-night conversations, more moments of Sophia calling Marcus's name. She saw a life being built not from wealth or status, but from shared values and genuine care. And she saw that Marcus saw it too. Come here, he called. Sophia says we all need to add our handprints to the mural. Elena joined them, and together, Elena, Marcus, and Sophia, they pressed their hands in paint and added them to the mural, 3 prints in different sizes, overlapping slightly, forming their own small constellation on the wall. As their hands dried and Sophia ran off to show the other staff her artwork, Marcus stood beside Elena, their painted hands almost touching. Thank you, he said quietly, for talking to me in the darkness, for being kind when you had no reason to be, for letting me be part of your family. Thank you for listening, Elena replied, for seeing me as a person, not a worker, for letting us be part of your life. They stood together, looking at their handprints on the wall, a permanent mark of their connection, of the moment a billionaire, a maid, and a toddler had found each other in the darkness and pulled one another into the light. Sophia returned, grabbing both their hands. "Luna," she announced, pointing at the mural's moon. "Yes, Luna," they agreed together. And in that moment, under a painted sky full of stars and dreams, three souls who'd saved each other stood hand in hand, ready to spend their lives helping others find their own constellations in the darkness. Proof that sometimes the most profound miracles come not from medicine or money, but from the simple, revolutionary act of treating each other with kindness.
The end.
We are all connected by invisible threads. When we pull on one thread, somewhere else, someone feels it. And if we're lucky, they pull back.